Welcome to WEFTEC Now. I'm Travis Loop with the Water Environment Federation, here to talk about the ReNEW Water Project. I'm with Tanja Rauch-Williams, your Wastewater Innovation Lead for Carollo Engineers, but you are also the principal investigator for the Resource Recovery Baseline Project that was part of the ReNEW Water Project. So welcome, glad you're here.
Thank you.
What is the ReNEW Water Project?
It's an effort that was started by WEF about 2 years ago to do two things. One thing is for us as a country to get an idea where do we actually stand with resource recovery at facilities, how much nutrients, water, and energy are we actually recovering at this point in time, and use that as a baseline for communication and other objectives to further enhance resource recovery over the next decades and give utilities tools to do that. And then secondly, based on that information, really a call for action for utilities to consider technologies as they undergo improvement projects and build that into their capital improvement plans.
Yeah, so it really has these multiple objectives, I guess. Try to drive innovation, try to drive resource recovery, be a call to action, be a good learning about where we actually stand, because this has never been done before, really a comprehensive look at what the recovery rates are. And that NEW, like you said, stands for nutrients, energy, water. So could you elaborate about why this is really so important and why it should be happening now?
Well, it should have happened already in the past, but it is pretty clear that water resource recovery facilities are really in a great strategic position in that they get everyday resources into their facilities. And so we have an obligation to think about how these resources are being used. And we know that the resources, water, nutrients for fertilizers and energy are limited resources. And we have national understanding and an international understanding that we need to move towards circular economies in these and regional use in communities of these resources. And that becomes only more urgent as we follow the science. And so we know where the end point is, we know we're not here today, and we have a few decades to turn it around and get there. And so this is one leadership role that WEF has taken on to make that effort and make it a topic and provide the tools for utilities to help communicate to decision makers where they are standing and what needs to happen to get there.
Sure. So last year you mentioned that there were this initial gathering of data as to what the rates of recovery are and the amount of recovery. Could you talk about those initial findings, kind of that baseline data?
Yes, certainly. So in that baseline, developing the baseline of where we're standing with resource recovery currently, we went into existing databases that have been developed by EPA and other organizations on biosolids, on phosphorus, nitrogen, energy. We also did a second effort where we actually undertook a survey among water resource recovery facilities in North America to collect very detailed information on mass balances. So that database is now also available to the public and covers about 20% of all wastewater, which doesn't seem a lot, but for the initial effort over 3-4 months, this was a great response we received from utilities. And so with that, we understand now, and WEF published it effectively, where we're standing with the different resources. And from that, what has happened since that report has been published and that's posted on WEF's webpage is thinking about how this information can be used and how we can track who are leaders in the industry on certain recoveries, not just generally, but by facility size, by region. And then you can hone in and say, here are the 10 best performing facilities, what are they actually doing? And utilities can use that information to benchmark how does our utility compare to that? And if they are not where they want to be, they have means to communicate to citizens and decision makers, board and councils. Does that, where we're currently standing as a resource recovery facility, how does that align with our objectives as a community? and what do we need to do to get there. So those are the things that are happening based on that report.
And you mentioned this 20% was kind of captured, right? 20% of the wastewater, getting an idea of that much of the sector. But you can that's a good statistical sample to be able to understand kind of the rates of recovery. Right.
It was a complementary effort to the databases that we have nationally.
Okay.
So we have databases that describe very well, for example, for biosolids, how biosolids are used on a state basis, and it breaks it actually down by utility. And so we aggregated all that information, but we have knowledge gaps. We don't know whether utilities are capturing and how they are capturing energy demand besides biogas. So there are other energy recovery opportunities, and that is just one example, but that's where we wanted to hone in with a much more detailed survey that was completed by a large number of facilities, about 150 utilities, from very small to very large, and it allowed us then also to hone in and say who are the facilities that first adopt, for example, phosphorus recovery technologies, and draw some statistical conclusions on who are the leaders, how do these new technologies enter the market.
How are utilities doing on these three different areas in general, if you could say? Like, how are they doing on nutrients? How are they doing on energy? How are they doing on water reuse?
Yes. Some utilities have very good information and are very aware where they are standing. And some utilities have not yet even started thinking about their operations in this manner. However, traditionally as a country, we're doing very well with biosolids because there is a lot of land application. About 50% of the biosolids are being land applied, and that is recovery of phosphorus, of nitrogen, of water inherent in the biosolids, as well as carbon. And so that is a very solid basis, and we have to maintain that and expand that. On other areas, so our national aggregated average of water reuse is about 7%. However, we also found that it is interesting to think about what are we actually labeling as recovery, because traditionally we think about it as non-portable reuse, portable reuse, and a large portion of water does go to surface water, which benefits already aquatic life or the aesthetics, how we perceive as the aesthetics of landscape.
Sure.
So there needs to be a discussion, and it's important for utilities and communities to have a discussion. Where are we currently standing? What do we want to do with water resources, and have a conscious goal of how to use those limited resources.
So what's happening now with ReNEW? I know there's some talk and some activities going on at this WEFTEC. What's happening around ReNEW right now in 2019?
Yeah, I'd say this year there were three efforts with ReNEW. One is to make people aware of what WEF has done with that baseline analysis, and leverage those results for communication of where we're standing, and draw people's awareness to that in some areas we're doing quite good, we need to do better, but in others we're not yet very strong. The second thing is to actually use this data to think about goals. So it's like everybody who is doing financial planning for retirement, you know where you're today and you know where you need to be. And that is a discussion that is going on. How do we get in each of these resources to a defensible and acceptable aggregated goal as a nation, but then also, and maybe more importantly, how does it break down to feasible and desired goals on a community scale and on regional scale, so that it can also be managed and tracked and benchmarked over time. And then the third element is to think about WEF's role in further supporting this effort. This was first thought of a one-time baseline analysis. It became apparent with that study and with continued conversations that it needs to be an ongoing effort, and then because we have still data gaps that we couldn't fill in the study that we did, so WEF committed to look next year again in an update and refinement of the baseline, collecting more information from utilities. So that is an ongoing effort, as well as maybe involvement of WEF's committees to advance this and help in the goal setting that fits on a regional scale as well, the realities.
Well, the future gathering of data will be very interesting to see how the knowledge gaps can be filled, but then to see rates of improvement or progress in resource recovery.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very informative. This is a very interesting program. Thank you so much for your work on it and for sharing the information.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for watching. For more interviews, visit weftec.org/now.